sometimes often conflicting visions, which both Gandhi and Ambedkar might have had, or Tagore and Ambedkar might have had. Ambedkar and Nehru might have been more on the same page on a lot of the questions, as it were. Yeah.
So, thank you, Arvind. It was absolutely fascinating. I mean, the last part, that's the choice of every Indian today who cares for a better, more caring, more, shall we say, inclusive, less destructive future for his or her compatriots. What to draw from Ambedkar, what to draw from Gandhi, what to draw from X, what to draw from Y, people have not mentioned. But I think it is the spirit of, Indian democracy, Indian pluralism, that we don't have one exemplar. I tell my Ambedkarite friends, I completely understand, going back to your question of experience, what they may have experienced, which I as a Brahmin have not. What Ambedkar experienced and what Gandhi did not. I take the point that Ambedkar must be your most important figure. But A, must you hate Gandhi so much? B, can you stop a Brahmin like me from also admiring Ambedkar? You can't. So I think that is where all of us have to build, as my teacher Shiv Vishwanathan would say, we have to build our own compost heap of all these different ingredients and make it work for us, or make it work for all of us. But I think experience is I'll come to economic vision in a minute, but let me dispense of the economic vision. Though I have 2 degrees on economics, I understand no economics. This is a confession and also a reflection on the Delhi University economics examination system, where my dear friend V. Ramani, who was an economics topper, gave me his notes and told me, anticipate, okay. But I understand society and politics. So, which is my lecture was also really about society and politics and culture to some extent, and and environment. So, on the economic vision, I defer to wiser people. Clearly it can't be pure socialism, it can't be pure capitalism. What mix? How much decentralization, how much state intervention. Interestingly, of course, Gandhi, I talked about Ambedkar's opposition to hereditary rule. Gandhi's idea of trusteeship was that, the child of a prosperous businessman does not inherit. The businessman holds it in trust for society, And maybe some of the American entrepreneurs more than us, some of us too, but more the American entrepreneurs have practiced this. Someone like Warren Buffett, who gave all his money to somebody else to run. He didn't even start a foundation in his name. I mean, it's an extraordinary act of self-abnegation, which I think Gandhi would have approved of. But on economics, I think Gandhi's, I won't presume to comment. But I cannot resist your quoting Professor Upendra Bakshi with such delight and such affirmation. My dear friend Upen, I'm sure, all you lawyers have a great, and I'm sure even among lawyers there may be divided opinions of Upen. Upen is sometimes too clever for his own good, as his remark shows. No, where did Gandhi write about Dalit mutilation? Now, if I was to answer, and I call him Upen because he's an old friend of mine, let me call him Professor Bakshi today, since he's Professor Bakshi for most people in this audience. If Professor Bakshi was to say this to me, I would say, if I was to speak like you, I would say Gandhi talks all the time about the mutilation of innocent Muslims. Where does Ambedkar talk about it? What kind of answer would that be? It would be trivialized and vulgarizing the whole debate. It is absolutely true that because Ambedkar grew up in a certain environment, he understood. It's a question of experience. The question. Ambedkar understood these elements in an elemental way, in an experiential elemental way. He had seen it to his mother, his sister, his brother, his father, his other fellow, Dalits in the village. Gandhi had not seen that. But Gandhi was able partly, but on the other hand, Gandhi, through his experience with Muslims in South Africa, with Muslims in Bihar and Bengal, was able to see certain things. Gandhi's understanding of Dalit harassment and persecution was largely academic, and partly actually a result of people who informed him. Part of the greatness of Gandhi was that he was always learning. Ambedkar changed his views a lot, as Nagaraj documents. Right. For example, intermarriage, Gandhi came to accept because of Ambedkar. But even before that, he was changing. If you look at Gandhi's understanding of the Dalit question, You know, before Ambedkar, there was his Dalit associate in South Africa, Lawrence and Lazarus, who told him that in the diaspora maybe be equal, but if you go to rural Tamil Nadu, you'll find something else. Narayana Guru, whose followers persuaded Gandhi that temple entry was, you know. So I'd say this is, and I don't want to get this whole thing into a defense of Gandhi versus Ambedkar. But I think there's a very interesting meeting points. And even with the conversion, Eleanor Elliot, I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Eleanor Elliot in my book. You know, Eleanor Elliot is the great doyen of historians of untouchability. She's an extraordinary American scholar, now tragically deceased, who in 1966 wrote a magnificent thesis called Dr. Ambedkar and the Mahar Movement. She could not get a publisher in that, because in India at that time, because that was the climate where it came to, you know, books on Ambedkar. I mean, it studied the Dalit Panthers in Maharashtra, whom, again, I should have mentioned, who influenced our Kannadiga Dalits too, you know, who actually brought Ambedkar in the public discussion. But even his conversion on Buddhism, Eleanor Elliot, and I take her as an authority I respect and trust, writes that after the conversion, Ambedkar told his friends in Nagpur, I told Gandhi, as Ambedkar famously said, I was born a Hindu, I will not die a Hindu. He said that in 1935. 21 years later, he converts after considering Sikhism, Islam, and Christianity. He converts as a Buddhist. And Dr. Elliot says, Ambedkar told his colleagues in Nagpur, I told Gandhi, I will convert in a way in which will not harm us, Indians. Now, what does that mean? You know, he's left enigmatic. Does the Buddha preach non-violence? Does he preach non-possession? Does he preach the middle way and hence environmental sustainability? Is it an Indian faith and not a foreign faith? We can't say. But you know, I'll just say one last thing, Arvind. You know, when it comes to Ambedkar and Gandhi, you know, it's an endless and fascinating debate. Arvind is not unsympathetic to Gandhi, but kind of favors Ambedkar. I am deeply sympathetic to Ambedkar, but maybe for whatever reasons prefer Gandhi a little bit. But actually, if you look at this debate, you know, I sometimes think that the only person who could have done true justice to this debate and its depiction and its understanding and unfolding of the layers is not Arvind Narayan, is not Ramachandra Guha, is not Professor Ubendra Bakshi, but would have been either Girish Karnad or Vijay Tendulkar. You know, that I think it needs and maybe there's a young playwright, not necessarily two, I've quoted two, apologies for mentioning two Brahmin males, two deracinated Brahmin males, it could be a Dalit, it could be a woman, but I think only a playwright can, I mean, it's just you know, so much charge it has, emotional, political, cultural, historical, philosophical, religious charge, that, you know, I would love for a young playwright to, I wish Girish Karnad or Vijay Tendulkar had done it, but they're gone, somebody else has to do it.
Thank you, Professor Guha, for that fantastic response. I think we'll open it now to the two, three questions at a time. Yeah.
If anyone has a question, request you to kindly raise your hands.
So my question is basically that Baba Sahib warned that the success of constitution would not only depend on the structure of the constitution, but also on constitutional morality.
Yeah.
In your views, where do you think that the modern India has failed in upholding the same? And
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Pranav Bhalla. I'm a first-year law student at NLS. So my question was, what do you think Ambedkar would attribute as the reason why casteism would exist to the extent it does in a state like Bihar, especially since we were mentioning the electoral revision? Considering the fact that if you were to take the caste census statistics at face value, the majority of the population belongs to a backward caste. So why would casteism in a state like Bihar still be such a big imposition on society?
Yeah, sure. One more?
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. To start off, I'm really thankful to NLS and Justice Ahmadi Foundation because I believe discourse, be it religious, social, or constitutional, is really the need of the hour. Coming to my question, when you earlier talked of two classes of the society which are discriminated and being alienated against, particularly the Adivasis and the Muslims, when it comes to, let's say, the religious minorities being the Muslims and Christians, do you think Dr. B.R. Ambedkar would have advocated for some sort of reservation or any other provision for the upliftment of these particular social groups in today's India?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. So I'll try and answer all of these. Now, reservation is a very ticklish issue. You know, what would Dr. Ambedkar have thought of? Clearly, he was absolutely approved of SC and ST reservation. Would he have come to recognize that some OBCs needed reservation? What would he have thought of the creamy layer? What he have thought today about Dalit Christians and Pasmanda Muslims? Now, these are, in his writings, you really have no clue. I mean, Arvind knows his writings better than me. But my own view is some amount of reservation is definitely important. There is a question about to whom, whether I personally believe, and I'm now hanging myself out to dry here because I presume this lecture will be broadcast. I personally believe the Supreme Court was wise in setting a 50% limit. And that 50% limit can be surely used in a more interesting way to include some other groups. You know, so, but again, in Ambedkar's writings, you don't have don't have really a clue, as far as I know. On why is casteism so prevalent? I think part of it has to do with what Arvind said, you know, associative life. You know, how many do we meet? Do we hang around only with our caste men? Part of it has to do with absolutely such little intermarriage. You know, I think there have been studies that show that 85 to 90%, or probably more than 90%, are still within the same caste, if not the same subcaste. Part of it has to do with, and this is where Ambedkar and Nehru, of course, differed with Gandhi, that the village, as Ambedkar famously said, is a den of iniquity. You know, the fact that Bihar has seen least urbanization, industrialization, may be part of it. On constitutional morality, I think that's, Ambedkar, of course, was drawing on the works of George Grote, the British thinker. But it's a very profound point. And in some ways, there's a parallel between Gandhi and Ambedkar on the question of personal and public morality. You know, I mentioned you, not for the first time, I chastised the Congress party for being a family firm. It won't be for the last time either, by the way. But one of the interesting aspects about Gandhi is that he had 4 children. All went to jail several times in the freedom struggle. Not one became an MLA or an MP. We know that Harilal was denied a law education because he was Gandhi's son. But this is also a certain kind of morality. Now, when it comes to constitutional morality, how do policemen behave? How do civil servants behave? How do judges behave? How do they internalize this? I mean, I think this is a deep moral flaw in our society. You know, and when this linked to what Ambedkar said about top dressing on Indian soil. But it has to be, at all levels, it has to be incorporated, you know. And how is it done? And sometimes it's the most unusual person who advocates constitutional morality. You know, today, of course, one of the ways in which constitutional morality is not obeyed is in Parliament and in our legislators, where they hardly any debate, or it's uncivil. I mean, they don't know how to disagree without being disagreeable. To quote the late Representative John Lewis. But also, you know, it's just this idea that sometimes opposition and ruling party are brought together under the false flag of jingoism. For nothing else, not for more constructive. And let me give you one example, since, you know, this is, you and many other people in this room are too young to remember this. But one aspect of post-Ambedkarite, post-Gandhian, post-Nehruvian constitutional morality that has been enunciated in Parliament, that has stuck with me ever since, comes from the unlikely source of a former RSS pracharak. Nanaji Deshmukh was a lifelong RSS pracharak who became a minister in the Janta government of 77 and 79. When he saw how that government fell, he left the RSS, left politics, and became a social worker in rural UP. And after 20 years of social work, he was nominated to the Rajya Sabha. And during the 2002 Gujarat riots, I mean, this is, in a sense, this example comes spontaneously to me, but is not irrelevant to the person after whom this lecture is named. In the 2002 Gujarat riots, and you've all read about it, and you know the polarizing stuff that still goes on social media and so on, Nanaji Deshmukh made one of his few speeches in Parliament. He said, the Prime Minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and the leader of the opposition, Srimati Sonia Gandhi, should go on a joint peace mission to Gujarat. That to me is constitutional morality in action. Whether Ambedkar would recognize it, I don't know. But this idea of, for the larger good, for mitigating suffering, for not promoting yourself and your kinsmen and your religious and your castemen, that is where I think Ambedkar, I think, would have absolutely recognized the profound nobility of that intervention by Nanaji Deshmukh. And that's why we need to bring in to all spheres of our public life. And it's hard because of, but it's a very important aspect of Ambedkar's teaching. I think, again, this goes to the fact, Gandhi and Ambedkar is fascinating because they are both incredibly wide-ranging. You will find no two thinkers who write about everything. One on the basis of experience and learning, one on the basis of experience and intuition. Gandhi was a very poorly read man, which I don't hold against him, by the way. But I think this idea of constitutional morality, Ambedkar was also a deep philosophical thinker, and I think these aspects of his work, but I see that as, absolutely, relevant to where we are today.
Hi, sir. It's
Where? Yeah.
it's very nice to
Can you stand
listen
up?
you.
I can see you then. Can you stand up there? I can see you. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, sir. It's very nice to listen you. I encountered you for the first time when I completed 10th class. I read your book, India After Gandhi, and it got me something to do with history, and I'm very thankful for that. My question is simply that I have read Gandhi and Ambedkar, and Gandhi addressed the depressed class as Harijans, but
Yeah.
Ambedkar addressed as Dalits.
Correct.
I am very naive for this, but can you please explain
Yes.
why
Yeah.
is this contradiction?
That's a very good question. I'll answer that. It's a very good question.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Dr. Guha. I'm Ishan. I'm a student of economics from St. Stephen's College, Delhi University. So I think your analysis is pretty apt in how economics is taught.
But I'm sure you know more economics than me.
Oh,
Even
well,
at your age.
I doubt. Before asking a question, just a comment, because you ended it with playwrights tackling the debate of Gandhi and Ambedkar. Rajesh Kumar has written a play of the debate of Gandhi and Ambedkar, which keeps staging in Delhi, and I think all of us could perhaps have a look at that.
We'll bring it to BIC.
Oh, for sure.
Ask him to contact Vikram Bhatt and Sandhya. We'll bring it here.
So my question is fairly simple. Would Dr. Ambedkar call himself an Ambedkarite? What arguments of an Ambedkarite today would he perhaps take with a pinch of salt? Thank you.
Very good question, yeah. One more maybe, yeah. Hey, no, we're going to ask the question.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the lecture, first of all. I'm Himang. I'm a third-year student at the National Law School. And the question that I had essentially had something to do with the top dressing on Indian soil quote that you made of Ambedkar. The way that I see it, that there are two levels of intervention possible to say remedy the situation that we have currently. And I think that it's both the top dressing and the Indian soil currently, which has undergone a sort of rot. That it is both the formal legalistic institutions that we've come up with to remedy societal problems that have undergone some sort of decay, and both at the societal level as well. So currently, from where we stand, where should our interventions be pointed towards? Towards a more legalistic formalist interventions, or towards a more civic society-based intervention?
So, my answer to the last question will be somewhat, shall we say, commonplace. As I said, again, it depends on where you are. But, I think for a truly functioning democracy to work, there are three levels. There's the state, there's private enterprise, and there's civil society. So I would say, notwithstanding my saying I understand no economics, I allocate private enterprise a greater role than either Ambedkar or Nehru did. But not as great a role as the current regime does. So you need private enterprise to generate innovation, wealth, employment, but hopefully with some kind of ethical understanding. You need society to practice constitutional morality, to draw on proper expertise, and you need civil society to be a check. Today, one of the aspects of where we are today, which is also true, by the way, of the 50s and 60s, was a great, one should, notwithstanding my admiration for Nehru, one should not be too nostalgic about that period because there was no civil society. The state was supposed to solve everything because we had these wise and enlightened leaders for the freedom struggle. And the emergency civil society was crushed, and civil society really flourished in the 80s and 90s, and now it's being crushed again. So I think Raghu Ramachandra wrote a book calling these the three pillars of democracy, and he's absolutely right. So state, market, and civil society. So again, it depends on how it has to be all. As individuals, we may make our choice where we work, and how we try and enact our, shall we say, our constitutional orientation. Now, the question on Ambedkarite and Ambedkar. Right, now, Marx famously said, I am not a Marxist. Ambedkar would have said, I'm not an Ambedkarite. Gandhi may certainly have said, I'm not a Gandhian. So I think, but some aspects, I think the kind of extraordinary self-organization, that self-respect is so much more visible and active and even influential in everyday life, in intellectual, political, cultural life. I think Ambedkar would have approved of, That I think absolutely. But, if you look at, if someone was to do a really good intellectual biography of Ambedkar, with Gandhi you can see, with Gandhi you have Raichand Bhai, you have Gokhale, you have Tolstoy, you have, Tagore to some extent, and you have his own experience. With Ambedkar, I suppose there would be Dewey, there would be Mill, there would be the Buddha, there may be a little bit of, so I think it would be interesting to see what he would, but I think what aspects of Dalit self-assertion and self-respect he would have absolutely endorsed and approved of, whether having Ambedkar worship is I can't say, I can't answer for that. Or the question of Harijan versus Dalit. Dr. Ambedkar virtually never used the word Dalit. Never. I would stand corrected if in the occasional Marathi writing he may have used Dalit, but in all his English writings, it is a legal category. It is depressed classes, scheduled castes, and or untouchables without the quote, but with a U capital, to designate their, how they are oppressed in society. So he never used the word Dalit. Dalit comes into use common currency with the Dalit Panthers in Maharashtra, and I'm glad it's used now. Harijan was an unfortunate choice by Gandhi. It was criticized at the time. In fact, if you read my biography, I talk about how Gandhi, it resonated with Gandhi because it was a term used by Narsingh Mehta, the great Gujarati poet whom he admired, who also wrote Vaishnava Janato, which is a beautiful hymn, resonant with meaning and entirely relevant to where we are today. But Gandhi adopted it, and Rajagopalachari warned him against it. When the Harijan Sevak Sangh, this is an interesting story about how India functioned then, it still functions now. When the Harijan Sevak Sangh was started, Rajagopalachari wrote to Gandhi, saying, what is Harijan Sevak Sangh, social welfare, adopt a direct name, Anti-Untouchability League. And that proposal was not accepted, partly because the Babus in the office said the stationery has already been printed. Now, this is so, but absolutely, it was a term that had a patronizing connotation even then, and I'm glad it's not used anymore.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, sir. It has been really nice listening to you. My name is Devak Agarwala. I am a first-year BLLB student in NLSIU. Over the last 75 years, there has been a lot of development in Dalit society, the status of Dalits in this country. I guess my question is, according to you, what would B.R. Ambedkar think about the status of Dalits in today's India? And would he be satisfied with the progress that has been made, or would he be dissatisfied?
Hello, sir. Thank you for the talk. Professor Anand Teltumde was of the opinion in one of his lectures that...
Can you stand up?
Yeah. Professor Anand Teltumde was of the opinion that there are no more movements which are specifically focused on annihilation of caste. Yes. There are a lot of movements and works on uplifting the Dalit and Bahujans on economic scale, but nothing on annihilation of caste. Even the speech that you referred to, he's talking about, and he's also making a reference to destruction of Shastras and so on. Along the line, did we focus too much on the economic life and then forgot the associative life? And is there a need for us to go back to that, annihilation of caste, much more aggressive and, pointed work? Yeah, thank you.
This will be the last question.
One more here. Yeah, that lady there. Yeah, after.
Yeah, hello, sir. My name is Rachit, and my question was mostly regarding the legacy of Dr. Ambedkar. Now, you mentioned in your talk about how Ambedkar's legacy was kind of lost during the Congress rule in the early years of independence.
Yeah.
And it was only with the evolution of the Dalit Panthers and the formation of the BSP and the rise of regional political parties that Ambedkar politics and Ambedkarite philosophy kind of came to light. My question is mostly along the lines of, does it require appropriation by a political party of a thinker like Ambedkar, who was kind of radical for most political parties of his time, and whether such kind of selective appropriation, as we see in the case of Ambedkar's arguments against the partition, where he kind of makes a case against how Hindus and Muslims can never coexist, and how that kind of selective appropriation by political parties such as BJP or the RSS can be prevented in any way.
Yeah, good afternoon, Professor Guha. I'm an educator. I come from a place where we talk about where did Ambedkar's thinking develop from, and his influence from Dewey or Mills. Or what I see missing in Indian education is the critical thinking part. The last quote you mentioned about inquiry. Now, if you're not going to build that inquiry into any of the institutions we have, how do we go ahead with this thinking of educate and agitate, or like to move ahead with the thinking of Ambedkar if you're not going to build up critical thinking at all? What's your views on that?
No, these are all wonderful questions. Some of them are beyond my competence. I don't really deal that actively with education. I hesitate to prescribe, how people should appropriate or misappropriate Ambedkar. One of the advantages of living in Bangalore is that you're not compelled to be a Rajguru. But I would just try to repeat, and they're all very interesting. I mean, all the questions show concern, anxiety, worry, vision, a deep sense of wanting things to be better in this country. But so I would say this, that as a kind of conclusion to all of this, I would say, and in a sense sum up some of my remarks, that I think the Congress narrative of the 50s and 60s kind of ignored Ambedkar. I was, a victim of that, and so were others. Today, the danger is twofold that these questions have pointed out. And that we present him largely or even solely as the emancipator of the untouchables, which is the kind of the Dalit position. Or we appropriate him in cynical ways, like quoting some of his remarks, critical remarks about Muslims in his book on Pakistan. Now, I think Ambedkar had a very wide vision. And I think now some very good scholarship is emerging, from different perspectives. Looking at Ambedkar, I mean, if I look at some of the recent thoughtful works that don't pigeonhole him, the work of Scott Stroud, or of Valerian Rodrigues, again, one of our fellow residents of Karnataka. If you look at the very good biographies by Anand Teltumde, who was mentioned, and by Ashok Gopal. Now, maybe this more multi-layered, multi-dimensional view will start come into our understanding. And maybe, the critical thinking you want in the education system will also be there. I'd just like to make one remark at the end, and maybe I should to repeat what I've already said. Just as my pantheon always has many people. As a historian, I'm always hesitant to people ask me what is the most important problem that India faces today, or what is the greatest challenge, what is our greatest achievement. I think always a problem, singling out one. But I would say that when it comes to Ambedkar's legacy, those two, among all the quotes I've offered you today, the best known ones may also still be the most enduringly relevant. the one about the dangers of personality cults in all spheres, not just in politics. Even your question, don't think your teacher is the last word on anything, right? But don't think that, Facebook or WhatsApp is the first word on anything either, right? Or ChatGPT, By the way, can I tell a joke about ChatGPT? Can I tell one joke? Okay. I got a lovely forward the other day from a friend, a cricket-loving friend, in a cricket WhatsApp group. The only WhatsApp group I like being part of is a cricket WhatsApp group. It said, it was a ad for a tea stall. Chai GPT. Genuinely pure tea. Fueled by AI, Adrak and Ilaichi. Now, I think that's how it should. So critical thinking, absolutely. So to return to serious matters, the two statements of Ambedkar that I think are the most well-known and the most, as it comparatively relevant. The one about personality cult, is there in all spheres of life. The other is about this disjunction between one person, one vote, and one person, one value. And there I would like to say, consistent with my resistance to having only one hero or one cause, I would say that really there are four discriminated groups in India today. There are four groups where one person, one value is largely denied to them. Not only, you may have, people of Dalit and tribal backgrounds who are in big positions, but these are Dalits, Adivasis, women, and Muslims. All four. I think all, and which means I think all four. That is really the unfulfilled, belied promise of constitutional democracy in India. That 75 years later, these four sociological categories. Of course, there are other issues. I mean, there are the issue of under trials and harassment of dissidents under our obnoxious laws. But as sociological categories, Ambedkar was also a sociologist. Among other things, was also. I think Ambedkar recognized that visionary prognosis of his, that when will we have one person, one value, and apart from all the individual cases of one person, one value being denied in our legal system, among others, it is these four groups of Indians who are somehow, women, and possibly one could add a fifth, non-heterosexuals. I think one would have to add a fifth. I think that's where I think Ambedkar's, that remark of his, I think links to what Arvind said about associative life, and I think that's where all of us, as thinking, feeling, moral human beings, not necessarily Indian, only Indian, I think need to go back to those warning signs. I think they are still enduringly relevant to us today.